Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another live edition of Friday Morning with Andy and Sam. Andy is out. He is still on a professional quarantine lockdown situation. We will get into that more down the road as Andy comes back in the next couple of weeks. So, filling in for my main man, Andy Hall, is a Boston comedian, radio guy, the infamous Dead Air Dennis Mahler.
Infamous. Thank you. Oh, let's since I had the ability. Thank you. We now have a live studio. I brought my own live studio audience.
What's up, Chris, from the Daily Atheist? Thanks for checking in this morning. Man, Dennis, how are you, man? What's going on up there? You are a Baltimore guy by way of Boston, on the way around. I don't ever use that phrase.
Yeah, using that phrase too. I think it's you're a Baltimore guy by way of Boston or Boston guy. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know which way that's phrase is supposed to go.
Anyways, originally from Baltimore, ended up in Boston due to radio, and we both have. Well, I mean, I would have never made it at 15 years with Clear Channel iHeartRadio. I was there for about maybe a year, depending on the participation grade I got. But you were an old vet of radio. You're up there now, holding it down and ordering cases among cases of delicious Topo Chico this morning.
Yes, we were just talking about that before the show because I wanted to know exactly what it was. Because I see it all the time, and the bottle looks cool. And I'm like, I want to know what that is and how I can get it, and if it tastes as cool as it looks. And you're speaking highly of it, so I'm feeling good in my $50 a case purchase.
Boy, you weren't playing around. I was like, okay, all right, Dennis, let's go all in.
Oh yeah, it's I not to brag or anything, but I got all that COVID bump money right now that I need.
Yeah, make it rain with that COVID money. Yeah. But I have to say, I feel like a little bit like a poser because usually I don't have one around here. But this is like the goofball plastic. If you want to do it real, you got to get that cool glass bottle. But the thing with the glass bottle is you can't like be walking around the street with that shit. I mean, you can walk around the street with the plague and cough on people, but not a glass bottle, please.
God forbid. Yeah, no, we don't want to. You don't want to walk around with a makeshift prison shiv.
Right. I always go back to the old Happy Gilmore joke where he breaks the bottle, getting ready to stab Shooter McGavin. He goes, I was just looking for the other parts of this bottle that broke. So,
oh look, there they are, all over the floor.
Oh, there they are. Okay, it's okay now. I got to ask you. You are in fact the host of So What Do You Really Do? The podcast. Can you let the folks who check in with us every Friday know or fill them in a little bit about what's going on over there in on the space station ISIS, also known as the Dennis Studio?
Yes. Well, what it is, it's a podcast where I interview artists and entertainers about their day jobs because I think it's a very important and a lot of great conversations coming out from the things that we have to do as artists during the day to support what we want to do at night. So that's basically what the conversation is, finding people who do innocent jobs to be able to do whatever their artistic thing is. It's a lot of comedians because I do stand-up comedy, so that's my world. But great episodes include, like, I talked to a band who 4 out of 5 members of the band are music teachers. But they're all teachers cool. Different. Yeah, but they're all different types of music teachers. One teaches from home. One teaches at a conservatory. One teaches at a public school. The other one teaches music theory and the teaches transposing music and digital stuff like that.
Right.
So it's interesting to hear how different each one of them are as music teachers. And then the other guy in the band is a freaking white lab coat scientist with like ears and test tubes and shit. And he plays trombone in a ska band. Like, it's awesome. It was a good conversation. And we recorded live on a boat driving around that was going around the Boston Harbor area. So it was that's a really fun conversation. Other guests include professional comedians. And I talked to one guy that he had 35 jobs in 35 years. He was 35 years old, had 35 different jobs. So we talked about all those different jobs and stuff like that. Right now, all the episodes revolve around the COVID-19 crisis because that is the world we're living in every single second of our terrifying, nightmarish lives right now. So that's fun because we're talking to like people who work in the medical insurance industry, how everything's been changed by that. I've talked to a licensed social worker and how all of this is changing because she works with teenagers. So
right.
This whole thing has thrown all of these mentally unstable, mentally unwell children lives into topsy-turvy because her and her coworkers deal with them at schools, at home, at hospitals. Well, now there is no schools. Going into the hospital is walking into no man's land, World War I, no man's land. And going to the home is as dangerous as going anywhere else, if not more these days, because it's a confined space. So how everything in her industry is changing, how the insurance companies are working as hard as they can to screw over everybody as they would do. And then the most recent episode, and I'll just touch on this one because I feel like I have to give a trigger warning to the most recent episode that dropped, is with a comedian out of Seattle. Her and I, a conversation has nothing to do with COVID. It was just a story I wanted to share with people. Is her and I talking about her suicide attempt when she was 16 years old. So I just have to throw that warning out there because it's very dark. And we do a lot of dark humor too, which in the wrong context seems very insensitive and offensive.
Right.
We're going anywhere with it. And the reason I think it hit me so hard is I'm very, I suffer from mental unwellness myself, but her 9-year anniversary of her 16-year-old suicide attempt was on my birthday.
Wow.
So as I'm dealing with my own issues on my own birthday, here's somebody who posts openly about, hey, here's something why this day means so much to me. And I immediately like, hey, we need to talk about this. We need to figure this out. I want to hear this story. And it's a great, emotionally driven story with a lot of humor and funny and laughs in it. So there's that. And then also going back to the COVID and comedy and stuff, like I talked to 2 comedians who album releases were drastically affected because of the quarantine and stuff like that. So a lot of really good episodes, I think, coming out that are, imperative. And of course, everybody's talking about COVID, so that you can't get away from it. So you might, I just bit the bullet, dove in head first, and that's the conversations that we're having because why not?
That's what's going on. And as comics, that's what we're dealing with. I mean,
and it's changing everybody because of every industry and it's different for everybody. It's easy to forget that, comedians are people too with lives and stuff like that. So
I know. I wish they would have said that more when we were children and made that clear to people. Comedians are people too. But I was going to point out, though, I think I am very concerned about the way that this is affecting people's mental health. And I would say, I include myself in that. We really, I think for a long time took for granted, and I hate to sound so Blade Runner and dystopian about this, but I think we really took for granted just running into people you occasionally bump into at your coffee shop or, at the gas station or the dude at the counter at the supermarket that like little stuff like that you took for granted that was just part of the mechanics of your day. And now you're not bumping into those people. And if you're somebody like you and I'm going to lump you in with me, I apologize beforehand. But if you're anything like I think you're like me, those little interactions were what really picked you up throughout the day. Because if you could land a little one-liner with the dude at Dunkin' Donuts or the guy at Starbucks or stick the landing with the guy at the grocery store, boy, you walked out of there feeling like, shit, we're all going to be all right.
Right.
And now you're stuck at home and it's a fucking mess and we just got to hang in there.
That, people love to talk about, people online love to act like they're misanthropes and, I'm okay with being a shut-in and stuff like that. And like, no, you're not. But, I talk in the world of being a comedian, I'm not a full-time comedian. I was never really a full-time comedian. I was a full-time entertainer for a little while doing a whole bunch of like freelance stuff. But what I enjoy most about like doing comedy and doing it on the road the few opportunities I could do on the road was the small mini micro conversations with people. And not so much like, I get to just tell somebody to say, like when I visited a couple years ago to perform at the Fallout Theater. One of the things I loved was just the small conversations I could have with people going on. And I don't mean like, I'm going to tell the same joke of, the same 3 jokes being in Austin. No, I loved just having a 2-minute conversation with a stranger and finding out something about them or, talking about them, not just meaningless small talk, but like those
a connection, like falling down a wormhole with a bartender. And you start off 2 seconds and you fall down a wormhole about some movie that you're the only 2 guys in the room who like or appreciate or ever rewatch.
Yes.
And you're like, how much fucking fun was that talking about Blazing Saddles with that dude I didn't know for 2 hours?
Right. Or running into, cause I was there during South by Southwest and I just became friends with a guy while we're both waiting for a bus to go down to 6th Street. I think go to 6th Street and have, we're both going to 6th Street to have lunch. We're staying at 2 different places, but we were just taking the same bus. And then we got off the bus and we looked at each other like, hey, fuck, do you want to have lunch together? Total stranger. And we did. We had tacos together and it was great. And just those small connections that you have, even if we had just talked for the 5-minute bus ride and that was it, that is the interactions that I love, is just having that micro conversation with somebody, not small talk, not, hey, well, what are you going to do about the
right? That's comedy, huh? Yeah, not that bullshit. I'll say, well, it was very weird down here in Austin. That's when you knew shit was about to get weird. It's absolutely unheard of down here for South by Southwest to get canceled. So when that got canceled early on in the game, that's when people started looking around in this town and even in the state, I think, and even across the arts. Because I mean, dude, you're a Baltimore guy in Boston, but you got down here for South by. You know, I did a live read of a play I don't know, a couple months ago, right before this hit at the Fallout. So I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, we've both been on that stage, and it's one of those deals where it's kind of snuck up on us between South by and then when the NBA got canceled and then when Major League Baseball said we're not sure about this. It's when you really realized, boy, we're going into a new uncharted territory, but luckily we've got the best people in charge. We've got a president with a very, very good brain. That's what he says. What does he say? Stable genius. And what drives me nuts right now, I see my background when not doing comedy and radio and being a smartass was through political campaigns. And
explains the tie.
Yeah, well, I mean, I honestly, the tie was because Andy always looks so cleaned up, but we touched base with Andy for a minute ago, and he looks like fucking Harrison Ford at the end of Blade Runner this morning. I'm worried about him.
He looks like he's a medical doctor, a makeshift medical doctor in a dystopian war zone where he's just treating patients in beds surrounded by mosquito netting.
You know what he looks like? He looks like the ER doctor in Escape from New York when Kurt Russell shows up to like get stitched up before they drop him in to go save the president. That's what he looks like. Exactly. That's a deep track, kids. Look it up. I'm sure you can find it on Netflix. I do want to get into some stuff we were talking.
Escape from LA. Oh, and the Escape from New York doctor is a better look than Bruce Campbell's over surgical plastic surgeon face from Escape from LA.
That is a very good point, and I'll be the first to say I'm a huge Bruce Campbell, but I don't know that casting, huge Bruce Campbell fan, but that casting was a little out there, even for 97. Now, I wanted to ask you something. We were talking about earlier, just the changing media landscape that was already in process before COVID, but now everything has changed. Like we're talking about before we got started, this is not my usual setup. That's not your usual setup. We're now forced in a world where we have to, clean up and do video. Well, you were telling me you remodeled the room a little bit so it didn't look like, I put this beautiful painting up.
Yeah, I think it's going to stay this way too. Even when we'll go back to a world where we can be in person and everything. Hey, guess who didn't mute his computer? In this world where everything is what it is, I'm going to keep this. I like it. It's I think it
looks dope as shit. Yeah,
right. I threw a little blue accent lighting in there.
I like it.
For my birthday, sent me this like wooden Maryland flag plaque that I have right there.
Very cool.
Because I love I am from Maryland, but I think the Maryland flag is the coolest looking flag in all of
professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's just a killer looking flag with the colors and everything.
The Texas flag is bumming me out lately because we're doing this soft opening where we're basically putting people's lives at risk so that Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott, that's our governor, lieutenant governor, so that they look cool to Donald Trump. So we're going to put a shit ton of people's lives at risk and reopen pools and bars and, salons and gyms because Lord knows, what you need to do right now is go sweat on each other at a Gold's Gym right now during all this bullshit. Right. But anyways, I digress. I wanted to get into, I was starting the media landscape thing. We were talking before we got started. Now, I was made aware of some news that got me very excited. I'm a huge superhero nerd. The Snyder Cut of Justice League, that was the original intended form of the film. Yeah. For those who don't know, Zack Snyder was the director of Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, 300, a bunch of dark, gritty action movies. Well, he was doing the Justice League, and they took it. Well, he had his daughter committed suicide, and it was a pretty damn bad deal. Yeah, they turned it over to Joss Whedon, and Joss Whedon from Avengers fame, he completely kind of retooled the movie, changed about 75% of it, turned into more of a Disney Marvel feel than the dark Zack Snyder shit that he likes to do. But then come to find out, and this is what I was getting at, whether or not you want to watch Justice League in a 6-hour version or not, why do I need to buy HBO Max, Dennis?
Oh, so is that where they're going to release it? Is on
That's
HBO?
the only place you'll be able to find it. It's a miniseries on HBO Max.
See, I didn't follow up on the story. I saw that they're releasing the Zack Snyder cut, and it's going to be released on HBO. Well, all right. I agree with you. Why do we need the Snyder cut? Because it's not like he did any good with Man of Steel or BVM.
Right.
Yeah, BVB or BVS.
Whatever. Martha the movie is what I call it.
Yeah, right. The Martha Bros.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. I mean, clearly I love comic books myself. If you look closely at the background there, but I am a diehard Marvel ride or die. We'll say DC animated universe is superior, but when it comes to the live action stuff across the board, I think Marvel is crushing.
Yeah, they figured it out. Yeah.
Because they have a single unified vision and they care about quality. Whereas at this point, Warner Brothers is trying to play catch up on what they thought was Marvel's success, which is having a shared universe and not just telling good stories.
Right. And then at the end of the movie, oh, hey, what do you know? They tie in. But that was a great film. Oh, and what do you know? Bonus, it ties in, as opposed to we're going to force everything to fit. But yeah. I think what I was getting at, aside from the superhero talk and our mutual love for DC and Marvel and everything in between, how much are we going to splinter up these platforms to the point where we're going to have 3 different HBO subscriptions? We're going to at what point does we get like a Netflix Lite or Netflix Max or Netflix After Dark? I mean, how far can we go with this before we're like, can we just have fucking cable back?
Yeah, no, I mean, Netflix After Dark, why am I going to pay for that when I'm already paying for a Pornhub subscription?
Thank you.
Difference. But yeah, no, that was one of the things I saw early on in the media industry is that people started creating their own platforms. So then we were going to become a la carte. We're going to get to the point where all of our media entertainment is a la carte. And then somebody's going to come around and round up all of them together, which Disney's already doing when you have Hulu, ESPN, and Disney Plus as
and Fox IP. Like, it's mind blowing to go to Disney Plus and you have every Simpsons episode ever. I think it's the first time those have all been in one place.
Well, it's them taking multiple platforms and bundling it together into one price. So somebody else is going to come along either in the next couple of years because this is what we're going to ask for, because this is what we're asking for right now is, why am I paying money to Netflix, Hulu, Amazon,
Disney.
HBO Max, Crackle, Disney, CBS All Access, Peacock, CISO, all these other platforms that are more expensive than when I had cable. And then and wrap all that together, and it's going to, they're going to pay us, you're going to pay a bundle price, just like we're doing with cable, and everything's going to be exactly the way it was, where we're paying this a super high price to have everything bundled together. When we want us a la carte, when you give us a la carte, we complain about the price. So
we're going to end up going full circle all the way around to one platform that has everything, and you go, wow, this feels a lot like fucking cable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But here's something we were talking about earlier this week that I wanted to touch on, and it just left my mind completely. But it was, what were we talking about earlier this week that you messaged me about getting to? Oh, it was exactly what we're talking about. Joe Rogan is going to Spotify next year. Can you explain to me what you know about that? Because I saw his little announcement and you messaged me, and that's about as far as I got.
Yeah, so the Joe Rogan Experience was a podcast hosted by comedian Joe Rogan, who you know from like being an announcer at MMA fights, UFC, stuff like that, and also he was the host of Fear Factor. If you don't know who he is,
for many years, he was also the engineer on news radio when we were kids.
Which who then here? All right, so if you don't know who Joe Rogan is, maybe you know the dollar store version of Joe Rogan, which is Brian Callen, who is also a comedian who hosts a podcast that is very involved in MMA, and also replaced Joe Rogan's character on news radio.
That's very interesting trivia, and I would say it's probably a safe bet that Joe Rogan's show is maybe the most watched talk show in the world right now.
It is one of the most popular podcasts. It's always in the top 3. It has millions of subscribers. So yeah, it's a podcast that he does where it's a very long form conversation with, inarguably interesting people. The conversations go to good places. A lot of people like that. It's a 3.5-hour conversation or however long conversation.
And a lot of girlfriends don't like that.
Yeah, I can't. I think he would benefit so much more from editing. but that's my personal
Well,
opinion.
you know how I digest it. I've been listening to it from the beginning, but the way I digest Joe Rogan's show is there's a YouTube channel that he runs called JRE Clips, and you just get little segment by segment, as opposed to sitting there for 3 hours and watching Joe smoke a fucking joint with Brian Callen and get into UFC 35 or whatever.
Well, apparently that's that's part of one of the reasons why I went to the Spotify. So this very popular podcast got bought up by Spotify, which if you have a podcast, you can just put it on Spotify. You submit a link, they put it out there, end of story. They are now, over the past 2 years or so, Spotify is doing what other aggregators aren't really doing. And by aggregators are iTunes, Stitcher, places like that, where you can just put your podcast on and they host it there and send it out to their people via your RSS feed.
And you don't have to maintain it. It's so easy if you can get to that point. It's real nice. Like Stitcher,
and there's no money
Stitcher does is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, there's no money involved. Hey, what's up, Brian Bug? Thanks for joining us. We're talking about the Joe Rogan experience and him being acquired by Spotify. But what Spotify's doing that's different is they're becoming a network. And that means they're hosting audio, they're putting on ads, there is a money transaction happening. Very much like if I was doing, if my podcast is community television, Joe Rogan going to Spotify is like going to NBC. So they're going to be the exclusive host to the Joe Rogan Experience audio podcast and the video podcast in the future. Now, why this happened for $100 million? Is it worth $100 million? Is his brand, is his followers worth $100 million? Well, arguably, yes, because we're talking about it. And people now know more about it than they did before. But they're going to be the exclusive home of it, which means you can only listen and watch Joe Rogan on Spotify, whether you have a free account or a premium $9.99 a month ad-free account. And the part of the conversation of why he has not, as far as I know, commented on why he did, because he doesn't do a lot of commenting.
No, he did. He just did that one announcement, just saying, "Hey, this is what we're doing at the beginning of the year."
He's saying nothing's going to change. It's going to be the same show and all that when it comes to Spotify in September. But what led to this decision that a lot of people theorize is because of the clips on YouTube. They were having issues putting their whole show up on YouTube and getting demonetized for the content of the conversation, for the things they were talking about, smoke
or
and stuff
or
like that.
Playing clips from movies or playing clips from fights and stuff like that. Yeah.
So that added to the conversation of YouTube is censoring and it's communism and they're worse than Hitler and all that stuff, which I don't subscribe to any of that conversation. I think YouTube is completely 100% in their rights to do what they're doing. And
what they want to do. I was on a rant yesterday afternoon about how if you had gone to me like a young child, 7, 8 years old, a kid from the 80s who was definitely raised by the television, if you had came to me and explained to me what YouTube was, I would have just locked myself in my bedroom and just is it time yet? Is it ready? Okay, come back when it's ready.
Yeah, so it's YouTube has been demonetizing people's content. And what that means is obviously on YouTube, they give you the option to be able to share in the commercial, the profits made from commercials.
Right.
So YouTube has said across the board, not just with Joe Rogan, but across the board, that there's content that they're going to either take away your monetization for or not let you even select the option of monetization through their platform because you have content, this or that, whatever. And they're 100% in their rights, because what they're doing is they're not stopping you from making money. You can still go out on your own and sell ads. You could put content up there with advertising in it. You can also there are people that allow you to do paid content through YouTube, where it's a seamless YouTube commercial, just like the other thing. And you could do all of that. And that's fine. It's more work on you. What they're saying is we're not going to aid you. We're not going to profit off your content that we deem demonetizable. We'll still let you say it. We're not going to profit off of it, and we're not going to aid you in profiting off it. We're not going to stop you. We're just not going to help you. So
let me ask you, Dennis, because you obviously your stuff when it comes to media and the landscape and the way it's changing. Do you think this is a move that some of the more bigger names in podcasts are going to follow the next few years? Is Joe Rogan just the beginning of it, being kind of the face of the country thinks about when they think of a podcast? I mean, is this something we're going to see? Corolla, is Corolla already paid service? Is that already a subscription thing?
I think Corolla. I haven't listened to Corolla in a long time. I think when
I haven't either. It's probably been 10 years.
Yeah, I think he is his own paid subscription service, that's fine. I think if you offer the content like what's his name? Ralph Garman, who was the third chair on Kevin and Bean on K-Rock in LA.
He had a Kevin Smith cohort, yeah.
Yeah, when they fired him, he started his own daily podcast, live streaming podcast from his home, but it's only available through Patreon.
Right. The Ralph Report, I believe is what it's called.
Correct. The name is the Ralph Report, and I love it. I listen to him. I think he's great, and I'm so happy that he was able to. Same thing with Adam Carolla. When he got fired from radio, they both went in this podcast route. Just Adam Carolla did it 15 years ago, or whatever it was, 10 years ago, and I fully support them. Great, talented people, and they deserve every dime, and they deserve to be paid, and they are pioneers in the industry of podcasting. Whereas, what is this Joe Rogan thing going to do for the industry is going to be interesting to see, because I think what's going to happen is it will, podcasting itself enabled a lot of people to have a platform and a voice. I don't know, which is great, but I don't necessarily believe that everyone needs a voice, but that I digress.
That's a different conversation. We'll get into Tommy Lahren later.
Yeah. So what I think is going to happen is we're going to see networks and larger companies. We're already seeing it. A lot of people are doing this already, but taking people who already have an established audience and giving them a podcast and watering down the entire industry as it is.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of people think that it's going to be uplifting to smaller podcasts and smaller live streams and stuff like that, and will allow more credibility to people like them. And I don't think that is the way at all. Like somebody even says, like, this for you guys who have like 100 listeners, this is good for you because now companies are going to start coming to you to sell ads. Yeah, you'll make money. I'm like, that is not how advertising works.
No, that's the opposite of how advertising works.
It is not about loyalty. It is about numbers, sheer. In fact, if anything, this is going to make, if you have like under 1,000 listeners, it's going to make it nearly impossible to try
get it out there. Yeah. To break in. Yeah. I mean, it's like Dale Dudley and Bob Fonseca on the Dudley and Bob show told me when I was 19. It's not show friends, it's show business.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like you already see this. Like, not only did Spotify acquire Joe Rogan podcast, but they also acquired Last Podcast on the Left, which is
that's a huge podcast.
Yep, huge podcast about horror movies. And also 2 years ago, they acquired Gimlet Media, which is one of the, at the time, largest outside of NPR and BBC, is one of the largest
independent free media. Yeah.
And by podcast networks, really what they are advertising agencies that have podcasts.
Right.
Really, all they are is they are people that came from the world of writing and selling commercial airtime.
Right.
And created a platform to host podcasts on. Really all they are. They just create podcasts, or they acquire podcasts and create podcasts for the sole business of selling ads across the platform. So they're taking 12 shows, adding up all of the audiences of these 12 shows together, which may or may not be crossover people. Right. They sell one commercial on all those platforms, say this is how many people are listening and downloading it and charging money, and that's what it is. And it's not a bad thing. It's great. There's smaller networks that are, like Nerdist, which is now, I guess, Legendary or whatever.
Legendary bought it. Yeah,
that Red Band Network, the Red Band Network, which is the producer for the Joe Rogan Experience.
Right.
Brian Red Band has his own network of podcasts and people that he works with. So it's nice that somebody is doing that kind of a thing, organize them. And like, if you take 5 podcasts, all which have, say, 100-person listener base, well, now you have 500-person base to sell ads to.
Right.
And now have cross promotion against each, or not against, but cross promotion across the board with each other. So, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're listening to podcast A, well, they're going to throw a commercial for podcast C in there as well. You may become a fan of C. So now your 100-person listeners may become 150 across the board, because now you're having more crossover, more people and stuff like that. And that's ultimately better. But at the same time, business is gonna business. So
exactly. And I think some of this is just, it's shit that was, it's natural evolution of this media landscape in 2020. But the thing is, from a guy like me, and I know you can relate to this, there was something so fucking special and so much fun about My favorite radio show starts at 9 a.m. And if I'm not in the car or have it on and hear the intro, I don't get to look it up. I don't get to go somewhere and find it later. I'm either going to catch it or I'm not going to catch it. And just the excitement of, I can't believe we're in the car right now. Here we go. The show is starting. Whether that was like the old Dudley and Bob intro here in Austin, the old Stern intro. Greatest intro in radio history was probably O&A when they like right before they broke up. But like when you're in the car, comes on, and you're like, oh my God, put your seatbelt on. We got to get on the highway. Here we go. And you're off on that road trip. Man, that's what it used to be. And now I feel, not sound like a dinosaur, but I feel bad for the kids growing up who they're not going to understand the excitement of, holy shit, I'm in the car, right place, right time.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said about discovering something in the moment that speaks to you. Like, dude, the first time I saw Fishbone play live on Viva Variety.
I remember Viva Variety. Oh my God, I haven't thought about that in 20 years.
I can't, every time a Fishbone song comes on, I can't think, because I can't help but think of the exact moment I first saw Fishbone and just went, like, just Angelo Moore playing a theremin in a ska band that was also funky and soul-filled and everything. And I'm just, my little brain just going, what
the fuck is this?
Yes, it was insane and awesome at the same time. So yeah, you know, that it doesn't hold this. I don't know. I'm gonna take the counterpoint to that statement, because even if there's still people stumbling on things. There are still friends who are sharing things. So there is still that aha discovery moment. It is maybe a little less organic because you could just be in a car and hear something funny, you know, that somebody else is listening to. Or that was the thing about radio, is up until recently, you couldn't escape it. Now with podcasts, it's very deliberate and very,
it's destination media.
Correct. Yeah. So you know what you're getting into for the most part. There's very little to no discovery, but that doesn't change the influence of discovering something. Like if a friend, right, you know, we just talked about last podcast and left, that is a horror podcast. Somebody's listening to who've never heard of it, go, well, I like horror.
I'll go check it out.
And they listen to an episode and they're like, oh my God, this is great. There is still that discovery. It's just, it's a
little different.
Yeah, it's different because you're not discovering things by accident anymore. You have to discover things deliberately, but it still doesn't change that eternal
the quality. Right.
It's like, I'll use this band as I was about to use a band I hate as an example, but let's talk about this. Somebody once told me that he will always be a bigger fan of the Ramones than me because he remembers the Ramones when they debuted.
That doesn't, no.
My counterpoint was listening to, the Blitzkrieg Bop for the first time could still have the same emotional impact to me as it did you. Same age, 20 years later.
Right.
It still has the same impact to me because it's me discovering something, even though it's old, I'm discovering it for the first time.
Well, Dennis, if not maybe more impact, because that is, I'll compare you, banging it out to the Ramones to me watching like early 90s or, late 70s, mid 70s SNL, just because we weren't of age to watch it live or to go to the shows or see it. Doesn't mean it may not have had a bigger impact on us due to the fact that, holy shit, why can't we do that anymore?
Yeah, exactly. It's
like finding it's like some lost scroll, some old, it's like finding some artifact.
Yeah, and that's a good thing about the media being as on demand and accessible as it is today, is that when you find that thing that inspires you, you can find more of it and become an expert in it. Whereas, like, I was a kid and one of my favorite things of all time was Bobcat Goldthwait doing this bit called Christo, where he claimed all the miracles of Jesus. And he just did these gags and prop comedy of pretending to be Jesus Christ, like the face on the washcloth and turning water into wine and all this stuff. And I love it. And when I was a kid and I saw that, you got one chance to see it on like Comics Come Home or maybe some other show, and that was it. It didn't live anywhere until YouTube came up, and I'm surprised that it made it to YouTube. Somebody found it and put it on YouTube, and I can watch it. I never see the version that I saw. I see a different version on YouTube, and I love it.
But it's I was just, I can't remember what it was, but someone I was looking for the other night trying to show my girlfriend. It was literally that deal where you're like, this isn't the version, but it's the bit, but it's not the version. You don't get it, and they're like, but it's the same bit. You're like, yeah, but it's not the same set. And he's not wearing the same outfit. And it's not the same. You don't get it.
Right. Yeah. There was, for the longest time on YouTube, there was the like bootleg self-made music video for Goldfinger's Here in Your Bedroom, which is different than the version that MTV played. And sometimes I want to go back to that MTV version because it's great seeing the one that they made, which literally looks like they made it on a VHS home camcorder. And it looks
probably did.
Yeah. And then looking at the slick, weirdly produced pre-boom of the third wave ska movement one, there's just so different, and it's fun to go back and look. But that version, I can find it now, but for the longest time, you couldn't find that version. You could only find the self-made video for that. And there's other things that last night I just saw on YouTube, Weird Al Yankovic doing with not Fine Young Cannibals. What was the name of the band that did that song?
No. It was I know who you're talking about. Not oh man.
Once there was this kid who got into it. That song, and it's something cannibal, and I can't believe I forgot what it is. But
I know. I'm trying to look at. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm going to go into my YouTube search history, which I can't believe I left the YouTube for this up early. Crash Test.
Don't get us pulled out. Hey, but I do want to.
That was the name of the band, Crash Test Dummies.
There you go.
We parody of Crash Test Dummies with Crash Test Dummies. It's like, this was just on a local TV show, and now I get to find that, and it's magical.
Yeah, I was having the same conversation like yesterday where, when I was a kid, if Jim Carrey was on Letterman, you had that night to stay up and like sneak back out of your bedroom to watch it, and that was it.
Oh, thank you, Brian Bug, for telling us it was Crash Test Dummies. He was the one at home screaming at his computer screen.
Yeah, breaking his laptop because we're like, it's the cannibals. It's the cannibals.
I Crash Test Dummies and Fine Young Cannibals mixed up, even though one is a second wave post ska band, new wave band, and the other is acoustic guys from Canada.
Well, thank you, Brain Bug. I thank you for correcting us, and you've proven me wrong when it comes to the need for the live chat during the show. So thank you, sir. I want to move it along to something we were talking about that it was unexpected topic I think we were going to get into, which is turns out we were both big fans of Jon Favreau's his world of Chef.
Yes, I love everything Jon Favreau does since I saw the movie Made.
Yes. Which, by the way, I had little shameless plug. Vince Vaughn plays a man named Ricky Slade, no relation.
Yeah, since Made was really good. What I mean is Swingers. When I saw Swingers, it was changed my life on how everything, how I saw everything, and how talented and amazing the guy is. One of the main architects to the Marvel Cinematic Universe
and our current Star Wars universe.
Yes, recreating Star Wars now. So yeah, I love that. I love that show. I love the movie. The movie is a simple story of a man trying to connect with his son, told through being a road trip story and through the eyes of cooking and food. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful and everyone's great in it. I mean, we can sit here and argue all day of whether Jon Favreau is the kind of guy that could land both
ScarJo
and
Sofia Vergara.
We could talk about that all day, and we could also talk about how literally he called up his buddy Robert Downey Jr. said, "Hey, come in here and just be the most Robert Downey Jr. you could possibly be on camera."
Yeah, with a pregnant secretary, and I mean the whole bit, and also, by the way, a tie-in to Made and Swingers with Cardiff Giant.
Yep.
Which that's a beautiful shared universe, and I wanted to point out you'd be surprised because if Jon Favreau can really cook like that, we might be surprised at how well he's doing outside of The Office. But I do want to say Austin is a great little segment in Chef when they drive through Austin. It's hilarious if you've ever been to Austin to notice that they're driving the wrong fucking way through town. Like they're coming in from the north and they're leaving through the south, and you're like, whatever, they're in Austin. Who cares?
And also that amazing barbecue joint and stuff like that. So yeah,
Franklin's.
And plenty shots of the Topo Chico mineral water. But yeah, and the TV show itself is also great with bringing Roy Choi in, who was the consultant and the part of the inspiration behind the movie, bringing him in and them just doing an interview show, through cooking, which, growing up. Yeah. Growing up, how many times did we see on local TV, national TV, late night TV, somebody cooking up a dish and being interviewed, and they're doing that in such a wholesomely organic and natural environment. It is the pinnacle to me of great TV interviewing, because if you remember before this, he had a John
Dinner
Favreau, for Five, where it was a panel interview over food. So it's clear.
Okay. Now here's what I had to point out to my girlfriend the other day, who maybe had seen Dinner for Five in passing, like at my place at some point. I think I own like the first 3 seasons of that on some old Mac desktop that I ordered. Like I get on iTunes and buy the episodes and go back and watch them. It's damn near perfect conversation show. But I watched a documentary on Disney Plus about Mandalorian, and it's literally set up exactly like Dinner for Five, except for it's him and Star Wars people.
Yes, yeah. Or didn't he? Isn't there also an episode on that with Tom Holland and RDJ too? Or did they also do the same thing?
That's on the cooking. That's on the cooking show. And they did the same thing, and they're eating.
Okay.
Yeah, that's so great. But and also something I wanted to bring up. Well, 2 things about when it comes to chef. One, I don't know if you've noticed this, and some of my girlfriend and I laugh about all the time watching the cooking version of Chef on Netflix. Is Roy Choi a little insecure about Jon Favreau having other friends?
I think Roy Choi is not a guy who is a public figure who's now in a place of having to be a public figure. I think that's what it is. I don't think he's insecure about Favreau's level of friends, because Roy Choi had, through cooking and being really good at it, has become a celebrity in himself and has many celebrity friends. And I'm not saying that anyway, in that, the reason I say it with finger quotes is because they are only discovering through food, and some of those celebrities want to be friends with the person who is in charge of things, who is Roy Choi. Not to say that any of these relationships aren't natural and great and cool and real friendships, but they are. There is a motive behind people wanting to become friends with Roy Choi, which is a cool guy.
Well, sure,
is an amazing cook, is a visionary when it comes to original and not being held back by the constraints of the culinary industry. And I don't mean just because he has sleeve tattoos, but
right.
Yeah, because every chef has now have sleeve tattoos. Anyway, so yeah, it's not because of those things. It's because he's just a genuine guy who's talented, and people want to be his friends because he is a good guy. I want to be friends with Roy Choi because he's cool, and super chill. And I can understand where it's like when Favreau introduces him to Gwyneth Paltrow, and you may catch a thing of him just going, ugh. Not really. Yeah. I have done that ever, but you could understand where he's like, ugh.
So the reason, so Dennis, the reason I bring that up is because there's been moments where we're watching it and Favreau will be, whoever it is with him, like the head of Lucasfilm, and they're making a salad. And then all of a sudden you see Roy Choi like over in the corner, and then he'll kind of work his way into the mix. He's like, I don't really like Star Wars. And you're like, what the fuck, dude?
Wrong place, wrong time, Roy.
You're like, hey, whoa. And he's like, yeah, no, I like to cook too. We're like, Roy, we know you're the guy. Like, you don't have to do that here.
Contrast that to when he brings his guests on the show and how much more involved in the conversation he is. No, you bring up a good point. And I think it's just because I think he's just a little bit of an introvert in the world of having to be an extrovert. I think
right. And as opposed to Favreau, who has to constantly do promotion on every fucking project and go out and pump it up, Roy Choi just gets to cook and put the plate on the table and say, let me know what you think.
Yeah, well, it's also that, Jon Favreau was that, nervous little guy trying to be famous and trying to be a host. And you can see him like, the guy he was in Swingers,
Right. Yes.
Become successful.
Yes, so, I don't have West Coast representation yet.
Yeah, and so who was your representation at East?
I didn't have that either.
But yeah, it's oh god, I could quote Swingers all day. But I could quote Swingers all day and still never say "Your Money, Baby." Like that's how great and quotable the show.
And that is the telltale sign of a true Favreau fan is that you can quote Swingers without going into anything baby related.
Yeah, or Vegas. Or
Vegas, baby, Vegas. Yeah. Well, I was literally 2 nights ago. I was doing the answering machine. She doesn't deserve you.
Which, by the way, let's for 1 second. Let's talk about how fucking out of left field and out of place that whole scene feels.
Well, what about just out of the world you're in? It's like the one goofy Mel Brooks moment.
Yeah, and it's like that shows you true independent
indie film, yeah.
Films, because there was nobody at some point that said, "Hey, John, time out. Let's not do this. This feels very out of place." I still love it. Maybe ironically because it's so out of place, or maybe because it fits in that one moment and it doesn't fit in the rest of the world of the movie.
Also, there's not another joke in the movie like that, and that's what's so fucking cool about it, I think.
It's what's cool, and also can be like because the movie's so good, you forgive it and you accept what it is.
And they don't force any more of that shit. So you're like, okay, that's cool. And then Made, I'm a big proponent of the, I don't know how, fuck it. There's no rules on this show. It's Friday. We're going into a 3-day weekend. Let's blow it out with some Made talk.
Before you do that, I want to point out, I just want to shout out to Brainbug, who, since I mentioned ska bands and Real Big Fish and also Fishbone is who I really meant, talking about recalling his lonely teenage nights with his Gwen Stefani poster back in his teenage years. So hats off to you, sir, because we were both there, very much like Fievel singing Somewhere Out There to the Moon. We were both just singing with our hands to our Gwen Stefani posters. Probably.
I understand. For me, it was Jenny McCarthy, but I understand, fellas. No. The airplane scene from Made. That is where that and Bobby Rosigliano. Anytime you get in trouble with anybody, even at 35 years old, I'll still. What's my name? Bobby Rosigliano.
Yeah, but no, it's like, oh, those are coming. Boom, boom. That's.
Oh yes.
It's if you watch Swingers and then you see Made, it's the same two characters but as losers. It's the last 2 minutes of like Vince Vaughn's character is the last 2 minutes of Swingers throughout in 90 minutes.
Rest through the next hour and a half. It's them at the full transformation. Favreau's cool now. Vince is the fucking lame, unself-aware, just forcing shit.
And it's beautiful. The movies were so great together.
Great flick. I'm still hoping that Vince gets to do a cameo in Mandalorian next year.
Yeah, they had enough cameos in season 1.
Boy, when Bill Burr showed up, Dennis, I just about lost my fucking mind.
And he was good. And,
he was great.
You had Adam Paley and
Sudeikis.
Which, by the way, that's where a lot of the cameos showed up, were just people under helmets.
Yeah, and just like, hey, can I be in it?
Yeah, or even just being the voice of somebody, some other actor in a helmet, and them just playing the voice of it.
Or like Nick Nolte, he just showed up and they didn't even have to do any makeup on him.
Yeah, they did.
Just kidding. He's if anybody see Mandalorian, he's the voicing like this little ugly gnome character, but there was a resemblance.
Yeah, no, yeah, they definitely. Well, I think the character was less based off of Nick Nolte, and the species was based more on Nick Nolte itself. So
yes. It's some kind of Gary Busey, Nick Nolte kind of mix. Yes, yeah, love child. I thank you for ruining my 3-day weekend before it started. Thank you. But I do want to ask you before we get too deep into this. We've only got a few minutes left because we wrap it up here about an hour in. But did you catch any of The Last Dance?
No, I don't know what that is. Please tell me.
It was it's not fair to say Michael. It was a documentary about Jordan's Bulls teams on ESPN. And I have to say it was maybe the best documentary series I have ever seen about anything.
Really?
And yeah, it was fascinating. I highly recommend it to anybody, whether or not you're into NBA or not. But yeah, everyone is
guy. So what is the good thing about it? Making a Murderer was an interesting story about somebody and controversy and stuff like that. Tiger King was a story about, let's be honest, meth addict white trash and impossible murder mystery. Those things are like compelling and cool. I don't want to say Tiger King is cool at all. It's like if
I
want
don't
to
either.
see
I didn't finish it. I set that out, and
drug addicts pulling off crimes, I'll move back to Baltimore.
thank you. I'll drive back to my place in East Austin and leave my girlfriend's spot in comfy, nice, clean North Austin.
But yeah, even with the OJ documentary, I get why there's controversy and stuff like that. What is the big hook to the Michael Jordan documentary that we didn't already know about Michael Jordan?
Right. So I would say, to me, the hook, because I was a big basketball kid. I was for sure I was going to play in the NBA. Then I quit growing at 5'10". But the thing to me was, it was always packaged in the 90s as this perfect group of athletes who were role models. And, Dennis Rodman's the crazy bad boy with the colored hair, whatever. But when you get into this documentary, you find out Michael Jordan might have been the meanest fucking piece of shit that ever lived in history. He was, punching teammates in the face in practice. Just dogging Scottie Pippen. It's just a fascinating deal. Because Jordan, without 90s PR, I don't think Jordan makes it as far as he does in the world of Twitter and Instagram and social media whatsoever.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that what the documentary was about that, and I never even heard about the dark side of Michael Jordan and stuff like that. As a kid that grew up in Baltimore, I was, of course, a Baltimore Orioles fan growing up in the 90s. And growing up as an Orioles fan, that is why I hate sports.
I understand. I'll say this.
Our hometown hero and the Iron Man and all this. And then you hear these little stories that didn't make it into the news that, of him like calling pitching plays. Like he'd be at
third. He's sitting at third base and I remember that.
The catcher to signal the pitcher.
And changing the pitches. Yeah.
Yeah. And shit like that. And and the whole story about him and his wife, and the whole alleged story of him and his wife and Kevin Costner and all that other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You hear it sucks, and I would never for a second think of hearing those things about Michael Jordan.
And that's the thing is, like, I think the 90s media machine and publicity machine among pro sports in the 90s was so powerful. They were able to cover up so much shit. In this documentary, it's all this old footage that they've never used anywhere. So you have Michael Jordan sitting around with a bunch of ushers from the United Center, like these old black dudes with their blazers on. They're going to show people to their seats. Well, when Michael Jordan first gets there and he's in his suit before he gets in his uniform and they have, pregame and meetings and whatever, he's sitting there gambling like a $50-$100 a hand on throwing a quarter, like the old game you play in high school, like behind the school. You throw the quarter, see how close you can get it to the wall. And it's him and like 5 60-year-old ushers, and he's just hustling the fuck out of them. Then they show him on the airplane, and he's playing like $500 a hand blackjack with like Pippen and Rodman. And then he goes back to the back of the plane where the bench warmer white guys are playing like $5 a hand, and he gets in there and fucking hustles their money. He was out of control.
Wow. Like, so it's the documentary is as surprising about Michael Jordan as the whole Tiger Woods golf club through the windshield, eating Waffle House waitress, as surprising as all that was when that came out. Then, wow, it's really interesting, and something
that's really interesting to see is a lot of Larry Bird in it, a lot of Magic Johnson in it, and the three personality differences between Magic, Larry, and Michael Jordan. Like Larry Bird was always a cutthroat asshole. Magic was always the nicest guy in the room. But whatever they thought that they were doing in like that late 80s, Michael Jordan showed up and was just a different breed of dude.
Wow. See, I assumed this whole thing was more like the Mr. Rogers documentary where it's like, here's a wonderful fluff piece about a loving, amazing guy who's never done anything wrong that we all love.
Remember?
Together. And I assume that's what this was. It is apparently not that, which is...
No, man. They pulled back the curtain big time.
As a non-sports guy, I wanna watch it. It's 10 parts though, right?
10 parts, yeah. They we blasted through it, but it's man, it was quite a bummer when it ended on last Sunday night. It was like, well, now what do we do? What the fuck are we gonna watch now? We're stuck at home.
Yeah, I couldn't get through the McDonald's Monopoly scandal.
Dude, we couldn't either. We got like 3 episodes in, and it's so slow. What can we not
drawn out? It's and they're giving us so many. Like they're really trying hard to make these people look more charismatic and exciting than they really are. And they're just taking what should be maybe at most a 2-hour story and stretching it out 6 hours or 10 hours. And why do I need a recap of the first half hour into the first? Why do I need a recap 30 minutes into an hour of the previous
of
30
the last 30 minutes, right?
Like,
and here's the thing: is I got
and then go through it and then recap episode 2 and episode 3. Don't give me 3 recaps and just again people who are just so grandiose, full of themselves. Like I get where the producers like met the lead investigator who was like, I want to be an actor, but he's an
Doug. How great is Doug though? Doug is he's like a Woody Harrelson character.
Exactly. And what they did is they tried to create a 10-part, 6-part, whatever, however long it is, documentary around him. And instead, and I think halfway through realized that, this guy can't carry the whole thing, and tried to make everything else more interesting around him. So you got this guy who's kind of barely interesting.
He's fun for a minute. You know what, Dennis, to me, we joke around. My girlfriend and I make the joke when we were trying to get into it, because it was a weird deal. We found out, we stumbled upon the story somehow on some article online, and we were mind blown about it. And for those listening who haven't seen the doc, it's called McMillions on HBO. And it's about basically an old Monopoly game that McDonald's ran every year. It turned out, now, Dennis, you're going to have to correct me, was the deal that it was somebody involved with the printing of the pieces?
See, that's the thing. It was so boring.
Is that what it was?
And kept losing. I think that sounds about right.
It was. I'm being told by my crack producer staff over here, Terry Brown, that it was the guy. It was somebody with the security company that made sure the pieces weren't like being messed with, which is what he was doing.
Yeah, that's what they were alluding to, because that was my problem. Is they never really I didn't finish watching it because it got so boring, but they never really made it clear who or what they were trying to say was the problem with it going into it.
Well, I remember there's a guy named Uncle Jerry that was like the mastermind, but outside of that, it's like, Doug's doing his whole. Doug to me is like if Gomer Pyle was on True Detective, and that's, I think, the biggest appeal to a lot of people at first. And then once you get deeper into it, it's like, okay, let's wrap this up. Either fucking steal the McDonald's money or don't.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, and they kind of bounce around in time a lot too. So it's very confusing to figure out when these things are happening and what the FBI's case.
Where they're at the point where this is happening, and you got to make a damn big string board like your True Detective to figure it out at home.
Yeah, they did. I don't know. I feel like maybe they presented what could have been a very compelling story and just dropped the ball in the execution of it, I think, because I mean, to find out that for 20 years, McDonald's was being swindled by the mob, which is the way they sell it.
Well, and low level mob, not like Tony Soprano, like goofballs.
Yeah. So yeah, it could have been a really great story, but who knows?
I will say this: I would like to see it done as like a miniseries, like a dramatic miniseries, or like a funny dramatic miniseries, because I think there's a way to streamline that story, tell it in a linear way with some great casting, to where we're all like, oh, well, why didn't you tell us that's what happened?
Maybe if they did a dramatic retelling of it, and bumped up the story a little bit and made gave the story to somebody who actually could tell a story. There's your rub.
There's the rub. Don't tell a story if you don't know how to tell a story. It's something I tell the neighborhood kids all the time.
Yeah, we live in such a world, especially in the world of comedy, because my stand-up comedy is very narrative-driven. It's very autobiographical, and I'm
the same way.
The word calling myself a storyteller, even though I do storytelling shows that are
but you don't ever want to see. That's so funny. You said that we were going to the grocery store yesterday, and we found, what did the storytelling bumper sticker say?
Something about storytellers.
Storytelling is the truest form of art, and you're like, yeah, of course it is, but what the fuck, like. And what kind of asshole performer is going to go, I'm sorry, I'm not a comedian, I am a spoken word storyteller? Well, then now we're not going to expect it to be funny.
Oh, the
Thanks
reason
for letting us off the hook.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. That's why I avoid, even people are like, Dennis, your comedy is more of storytelling. And I avoid the word storytelling just because in the comedy world, it's synonymous with people who don't know how to write jokes. And I am a firm believer whether your comedy is story-driven or not, if it's observation or whatever, you still have to have punchlines. Christopher Titus is one of the best comedians out there in the world who is doing storytelling and joke telling. And I look up to him as an idol, and I've worked with him twice at the club, not on stage. I worked at a club he's performed at, and he's a super great guy and awesome and deserves every bit of positive energy people can give to him because he is an amazing, kind human being.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. You got to work with him, and you know, it makes me think of and when I was still doing a lot of stand up in Chicago, living up there and doing did the Second City thing and all that. I ended up crossing paths and working with Colin Quinn. I'll never forget when he looked at me and said, "Seriously, kid, what's your fucking problem?"
As Colin Quinn, no truer Colin Quinn words have been spoken.
You know, I'm just saying,
Hey kid, what's your fucking problem?
No. He was so gracious, so sweet. I was so overwhelmed because out of this whole room full of people who were like, "Oh, great, the guy from SNL." I was like, "Oh my God, Colin Quinn!"
Tough Crowd was inarguably again ahead of its time and one of the best shows about comedy.
And I think it was the precursor to the modern conversation comedian podcast.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. It was the only American panel show
for a long time. Well, you had Politically Incorrect, but that is all whitewashed and sanitized.
It was the comedian's version of Politically Incorrect with Bill.
Yes. And Dennis, we're rolling up on noon Eastern over in your neck of the woods in your part of the world. I gotta thank you so much, and please come back when it's Andy and I together, will you?
I will come back anytime you guys will allow me to, because until August I have nothing else to do.
Me too, brother. I'm looking forward to a 3-day weekend. I will be in touch with you and Andy, and my best goes out to Andy. I know he's sweating it out, and another week of professional quarantine, which I can't imagine. Yeah, Dennis, we've got it. Dennis, we've got it good. I'm thinking I'm so lucky feeling right now. I might order HBO Max.
Glad that we converted you to the church of HBO Max.
I just want to see that fucking Justice League movie. I'm the biggest Affleck fan in the world.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I will see it just to see what the difference is, and pray and hope that the Snyder Cut makes any kind of sense.
I hope so. And maybe, you know what? Hear about this. I'll make you a deal. If it makes any kind of sense, we'll do a commentary track.
Down. I'm done for it. We'll do it MST3K watch along.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Dennis Mailer sitting in for Andy Hall. My name is Sam Slade. This is Friday Mornings with Andy and Sam. Come back anytime, and we'll see you next Friday. Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. Have a great weekend.
Happy Memorial Day, everybody.